Welcome everybody to the Unapologetic Truth, the channel where we speak the truth and don't apologize for it. Why? Because the truth will never apologize. Alright, today we're going to get to what is the deep state. A lot of y'all probably heard of this, a lot of y'all probably not heard of the deep state. Let me give you the definition of what the deep state is. Basically, the deep state is a body of people, typically influential members of government agencies or military, believed to be involved in the secret manipulation or control of government policy. Right? So you got people around here that, a lot of you probably already know that our policies and laws and regulations and things like that has been manipulated to go in the way of the Illuminati, Freemasons, and whatever other secret societies that are out there. Right? Okay, so this is what they call the deep state. Get your wine ready, because this is going to be a video clip that you guys need to watch. After you watch this video clip, I'll be back with you, and then I will give my take on it, and I hope that you guys will give what you think about what you saw and what the video was about down in the description box. Down in the comment section. So without further ado, here goes the clip.
Into the insider trading scandals of the 1980s. Other acclaimed works since then have included Bloodsport in 1996 about the Clinton White House and Whitewater affair, Blind Eye in 1999 about a doctor who was a serial killer, The Heart of a Soldier in 2002 tracing the life of a single victim of the September 11th attacks, and Disney War in 2005 recounting the corporate intrigue during Michael Eisner's 20-year tenure at the Walt Disney Company. His new book, Deep State, examines the handling of two investigations that were going on during the 2016 campaign. We knew of the probe of Hillary Clinton's emails at the time, and then of course the other one, which we all learned about later, was the investigation of links between Russia and the Trump campaign. Donald Trump, of course, has repeatedly denigrated the Russia investigation as some sort of sinister conspiracy by the deep state, a nebulous network of career bureaucrats, intelligence agents, military officers, and law enforcement officials bent on protecting their own power. Is there anything legitimate about this claim? Or are Trump's incessant attacks on the investigators simply acts of obstruction meant to cloak his own illegal conduct? These are among the central questions that Jim gets to in his very fine book, and he performs an important service. I just hope Attorney General Bill Barr and anyone else who continues to doubt the origins of the Russia probe read Deep State. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Jim Stewart.
Well,
Okay, this guy Jim Stewart, he's a reporter and also an author. He wrote the book Deep State. He's been investigating this type of so-called conspiracy theory, which is not a theory, it's a fact. He's been researching this for a very, 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 very long time. And he came out with some great information. So you guys need to hear what this got to say. Because you think that your vote influences the laws and regulations, which it does not. It doesn't even make it to the floor. And he's gonna bring out some information that you need to know, basically. So let's get back to it.
thank you for coming. Thank you for having me here at the, I don't need to tell you this, legendary Politics and Prose. Thank God we still have bookstores like this supporting authors like me who can still in this country go out and get to the bottom of things without fear or favor, without any influence, without, at least so far, Russian-type threats of being put in jail. As you were going over my increasingly long biography, he left out a few things. There have been like 3 key characters who have figured in much of my work, in some ways, should I say, have haunted my journalistic career. And they are Rudy Giuliani, who figured in my second book, The Prosecutors, very prominently, reappears in Den of Thieves, and yes, it's back in Deep State. Hillary Clinton, who was a central figure in Bloodsport, and who, yes, is very prominently back in Deep State. And then, not as well known, I had a brief period covering none other than Donald Trump. I was working as a Wall Street Journal reporter. This was in about 1985, and I was covering the merger and acquisitions beat. Omitted from Trump's resume is that he went through a brief and very unsuccessful period as a corporate raider. This is when he bought the Trump shuttle airline. He was making threats at taking over some other airlines. I was covering an M&A, so just as a routine part of my job, I called him up and said, "Can I meet you? Can I interview you?" He said, "Oh, definitely, definitely. Come see me, but it must be completely off the record. No one must know that you are meeting me." And I said, "Well, all right." So I went to Trump Tower. I went up through the marble lobby, and I was shown into his office, and we were chatting briefly when his secretary came in and interrupted and said, "Oh, Mr. Trump, Mrs. So-and-so is here." And he said, "Show her in, show her in." So I thought, well, so much for the completely secret meeting with me. She came in, and he said, "James, I want you to meet," I don't remember her name, it's Mrs. So-and-so, she was from the Philippines. And he said, "She is the richest woman in the world." I said, "Oh, I thought the Queen of England was the richest woman in the world, but who knew?" And then he turned to her and he said, "Mrs. So-and-so, this is James Stewart. He's the most famous journalist in America." At which point I knew she was not the richest woman in the world. Now, he could be charming and funny in kind of a mean way, but at the same time, I remember that interview. I was on my way down here to Washington to do some more reporting, and I mentioned I had to leave to catch the plane. He said, "Oh, ride on my Trump shuttle. I'll give you a free voucher." I said, No, I couldn't possibly do that." They said, "Well, at least let my chauffeur drive you to the airport." And I said, "No, a taxi is fine. It's we're all going to be in the same traffic." And then for weeks and months after that, he was
I don't know why I keep
always trying to give me something. Tickets to this, going to...
Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm trying to see why my computer keeps pausing like that.
to the prize fights, a helicopter flight to Atlantic City. I had no interest in prize fighting. I had no interest in going to Atlantic City, fortunately, so I said no to all of these things. Which was just as well, because a few months later, the Wall Street Journal real estate reporter wrote a critical article about him, and he immediately stepped forward and said he took free tickets to the prize fight, and the guy's career was over. He ruined him. He's all about leverage. I sensed that from day one. Anyway, so Deep State. The background here is I, as a journalist, like to pursue mysteries, questions that do not have any obvious answer. And as the run-up to the 2016 election was taking place, as you all know, James Comey, the head of the FBI, stepped forward and said he was not recommending charges against Hillary Clinton. He largely exonerated her. Only a few months later, just days before the election, to reverse himself, and then days later saying, oh, we didn't find anything. And I'll come back to some of those events later. But that utterly mystified me. Like other Americans, I did not know at the same time that Donald Trump was being investigated for a plot with the Russians. And when that emerged, I wondered, well, why did we know all about the Hillary Clinton investigation? We never heard a peep about Donald Trump and Russia. I didn't understand that. So
it's because Donald Trump was set up by the elites. The elites put him in that place. The elites put him as the president of the United States for a reason. He got in, did what he's supposed to did what he's supposed to have done, and then now he is the next president's term. Every president is set up by the elites. They are set up to do certain things. Once they have met their criteria, once they have met what they're supposed to have done, then it's the next person's turn. I don't know if y'all know that, but your vote does not count. Whether you black, white, Mexican, Asian, green, yellow, blue, your vote does not count. The only vote that counts is the elites. They place whoever they want to place as the president of the United States. Period. If the person that they wanted to place does not win, they will find something to discredit that person, to destroy that person's reputation. Then soon after, they will have enough leverage to place who they want to place in the head over office.
Oh, I knew Comey. I mean, he'd been U.S. attorney in Manhattan. I'd met him. He was figured in my last book, which is about perjury and lying. He prosecuted Martha Stewart, which is a case I wrote about. So I knew him. I had a lot of confidence in him, but I was very mystified by this. That's the kind of thing I like to explore. So in May of 2016, I had been trying to see Comey. The FBI by then was highly paranoid. There was already conflict with the White House. Suddenly, nobody was talking. Nobody would take your phone calls. I mean, I would go through the press office, but I could never talk to Comey anymore. Everybody was acted like they thought their phones were wiretapped. So out of the blue, I got an invitation to give a speech to the FBI in Washington on Friday of the week of May 9th. And I said, oh, yeah, definitely, I'll come down and do that. And I figured I'll drop in on Comey and see if I can enlist his cooperation in this book that I'm trying to do. Monday, I wake up, Tuesday, I wake up to the, of course, the news that Comey was fired. So much for my plan to slip into the FBI and talk to me about writing a book. But then I thought, well, am I supposed to go down there? And so I called up and said, well, do you want me to come talk? And they said, yes, do come. So I did. I was there the Friday after Comey was fired, and it was horrible. I mean, people were completely shell-shocked. Trump was then and there out saying, oh, everybody at the FBI is thrilled that I got rid of him. Nobody liked him there. People love me for doing this. And I knew right away.
If you're not going according to their plan, they will get rid of you. They will find something to be able to get rid of you. If they don't find something, they will make up something, push it out through the media, which is owned by the elites, push it out through the media to you to make you think that this person is this and that, just so they can get rid of you. So I hope you guys really listening and hearing what this guy is saying, because he's bringing out some undeniable facts and undeniable truth.
No way, that was a preposterous idea. Now, not that I'd interviewed every single person at the FBI, but everybody I met was completely demoralized. I don't think many people paid attention to my talk, but I had lunch with a lot of them afterwards, and they were truly in a state of shock that these events had transpired. And that's when I knew for sure, whoever talks to me, doesn't talk to me, I've got to do this book, because these are historic events. There's still the mysteries about why all this is happening. So that's when I really decided to start work on the book. It is, of course, there were many events that happened after that. The whole Mueller investigation, the resolution of that, all of which is in this saga. Other things, another reason I like to write books is I love to read books, and I love a good story. And this, to me, it's a great story because it has great characters. Love Trump or hate Trump, he is a great character. And even though he did not agree to talk to me for this book, he tweets all the time. So his voice his unfiltered voice does emerge in the pages of the story. And the other characters, I think, also are both on a political level, but also on a human level, very compelling characters. The central conflict really is between Comey and Trump, and I can't imagine two characters who are more congenitally different. I describe Trump as louche. I think that might be a complimentary term. And, you know, Comey is sometimes criticized for being overly virtuous. They are such polar opposites that I'm amazed they even got through that first dinner without Comey either quitting or Trump firing him. But there are a number of very important questions that I hope that this saga helps to explain in a way that Americans will trust. I'm not a political reporter. I'm not a partisan person. I've worked for the Wall Street Journal, which most people consider to be a conservative paper. I've happily worked at the New York Times, which many people consider to be a liberal paper. I grew up in the rural Midwest, where half the people were Democrats and half were Republicans. There was a real two-party system. But I was always raised to believe, to try to do what is...
Excuse me, I don't know why I keep doing that. Like, it's just, sometimes it pauses, sometimes it just keep going, I don't know. But just bear with me, the information is going to come out. Trust me, information is going to come out.
Best for the American people. Don't look only at your own self-interest. Act in a way that is best for all and tell the truth. The two biggest role models for me were probably Abraham Lincoln, who was on the license plates in Illinois and still is hailed as the greatest native son the state ever produced. And across the river from where I grew up, Hamilton, Missouri, is the boyhood home of Mark Twain, one of the great storytellers of American literature. And I sometimes, when reading a book, skip the epigraph, but I want to read this epigraph to you because I love it so much. Patriotism is supporting your country all the time and your government when it deserves it. That's from Mark Twain. And guess what? Donald Trump tweeted that saying in 2014 before he was president. Now, anybody who doesn't support him is part of the deep state. So he has certainly changed his tune. Well, some of the big questions here, which I do try to address, are, let's start with this one. Should Hillary have been charged in the email case?
Yes, Hillary should have been charged in the email case. If you're working for other countries against your own, you are to be tried and convicted. Period. There is no ifs, ands, and buts about it. I'm going to say it again. If you're working with other countries against your own, you are to be tried and convicted. There is no ifs, ands, and buts about it.
You would have thought this would have been laid to rest by now, but I don't know if you noticed it. When Trump announced his election campaign a few months ago in northern Florida, he spent part of the speech talking about the accomplishments of his first administration. And the crowd showed no interest whatsoever. They're muttering, looking at their cell phones, wondering, looking at the sky. And all of a sudden he decided he can read a crowd very well. He pivoted again to Hillary Clinton. And it was like a jolt of electricity went through the crowd. Everybody was bolt upright, and within a few minutes again, they were all chanting, "Lock her up, lock her up, lock her up." So the Hillary Clinton story lives on. Well, let me assure you that Hillary Clinton was thoroughly investigated by the FBI, very, very thoroughly. The story of how that happened, the strange reemergence of the emails on the laptop, it's a highly dramatic story. But
see, what you guys gotta understand is Bill Clinton is a part of the Skull and Bones, right along with George Bush. They both are with the Skull and Bones. This is why Hillary Clinton was not tried and convicted. They supposedly did a thorough investigation, but as it turns out, they didn't do no investigating at all. They tell you that they did a thorough investigation, but guess what? They're not going to go against their own. The elite will not go against their own. We're having some type of technical difficulty, so hold on for 1 second. Let me get this together.
And lock her up, lock her up, lock her up. So the Hillary Clinton story lives on. Well, let me assure you that Hillary Clinton was thoroughly investigated by the FBI. Very, very thoroughly. The story of how that happened, the strange reemergence of the emails on the laptop, it's a highly dramatic story. But in the end, there's no question that, you know, classified information did move on an unprotected server through Hillary Clinton's BlackBerry. It was probably negligent to have done that, but in all honesty, I have to tell you, I can barely cope with 2 or 3 email accounts. I wouldn't have wanted another one either. I believe her when she said it was just for convenience. And most importantly, there was never a single shred of evidence to show that Hillary Clinton herself knew any of this information had been transmitted. But let's say, for the benefit of argument, that maybe she did. That if you really wanted to push, and there were people in the FBI who felt she could have been charged, but let's say you really wanted to push it and bring charges. The precedents in this area for mishandling classified information are many. They're almost all involving men, in some cases high-placed men. There was an egregious example involving Alberto Gonzalez, who was the Attorney General under President Bush. And guess what? None of these people were ever charged under this statute. There are a handful of other cases that are misdemeanors which resulted in...
It's a reason why none of these people has been charged with this mishandling of government information. They won't go against their own people. Period. If you are a part of the elite, one of these secret societies, they would not go against you. Those mishandling of government information was deliberate. See, you gotta understand this. Once you sit here and understand that the elite is trying to destroy America from the inside, then you understand why they are doing all of this. Mishandling the government information, Trump working with the Russians, feeding them information, and the Bible. If you don't believe in the Bible, then okay, but for those who do believe in the Bible, it explains that all nations will turn against America, period. Which is the harlot that the Bible speaks of. So, in order to destroy America, guess what? You have to destroy America from the inside. You can't do it from the outside. It has to come from the inside. That's why 9/11 happened. That's why all these different bombings years after each other happened. You think the storming of the Capitol in the beginning of the year happened by chance? No, that was orchestrated. That was orchestrated. They are trying to get you ready for what's about to happen. All of these things that's happening is not happening by chance. It's happening by design. It's what you guys not realizing. It's happening by design. This is what the deep state is all about. Let's get back to the clip.
No prison terms, a slap on the wrist, but no prominent politician or appointed government official had ever been charged under the statute. So what would have happened if the FBI decided to recommend charges against Hillary Clinton at the time that she was the first woman candidate for the presidency? There would have been an incredible and, in my view, justifiable uproar at this. And by the way, Comey was very consistent with this. He never charged Martha Stewart with insider trading, although he arguably could have, because there was no precedent for doing that in those circumstances, and he did not want to be attacked for bringing novel charges against a successful woman executive. There would have been a...
Right. Martha Stewart is part of the deep state. She is part of the elite. Is what you're not understanding. She is a part of the elite. Why would they charge her with anything when she is part of their family? Do you see where this is going? They will not charge people who are part of their family, period. Now let's say somebody like Ben Carson had did something. He would have been charged and thrown in jail. Thrown in jail. He would have been thrown under the jail. Or any other bottom tier candidate. They would have been thrown under the jail. If a candidate, presidential candidate, or any other person, prominent person, that is not a part of the elite or going against the elite did anything contrary to what their plan is, they will throw them under the jail. Period. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. This is what the deep state is all about.
A massive uproar if he had in fact tipped the election to Trump by charging Hillary Clinton then. And I think there is really, could be no serious disagreement that the right result was reached in that case. I want to say something else about Hillary, and I was very critical of the Clintons in my book, Bloodsport, so much so that Clintons have basically never spoken to me since then. But how did Mrs. Clinton respond when she became the subject of a publicized FBI investigation of potentially criminal conduct? Did she call it a witch hunt? No. Did she call people a deep state for prosecuting her? No. Did she attack the prosecutor and impugn their integrity? No. Hillary Clinton behaved the way most innocent people do when they're charged. They trust in the system. They use whatever legal protections are at their disposal, but they provide evidence, they answer.
And this is what me and him differ. He said that most innocent people, she is not nowhere near innocent. If you've done your research like I have, you would know that she's nowhere near innocent. Also, he stated that they trust in the system. No, she don't trust in the system. She trusts in the elites, which she is a part of. This is why she didn't worry. This is why why would she out the people that she's a part of? That makes no sense. Why would she call them out when she a part of them? Which makes no sense. So some of the things I differ from, but for the most part, he's dead on.
Answer all the questions that anyone had to ask, and she turned over tens of thousands of those emails for examination. I would contrast that with the way Trump responded when he became the subject of the Russia investigation. And a very interesting question, again, it unfolds in the pages of the story. Did Comey cost Hillary Clinton the election? Now remember the sequence of events. In July 5th, he said, we're not recommending any charges. The whole email thing seemed to be dead. Trump was trying to keep it alive, but it didn't have legs. Suddenly, in October, the Wiener laptop, how bizarre is that? That Hillary Clinton's top aide put the emails on her husband's laptop. Her husband is engaging in, illegal sexual activity with minors, and it all comes out, and you get the laptop. I mean, you couldn't make any of this up. And through these bizarre facts.
I'm sorry to keep pausing this, but you have to understand this. Wiener, this guy is not a part of the elite. He actually is against them. This is why they bring up all this information. See, all of them is a part of child sex trafficking, child molestations, and all these different type of things. All of them are with that. All of them. All of the elite, whoever's a part of them, they all a part of this. But when you go against the grain, they will out you, period. And if you try to say that they are a part of it too, they will make you look crazy. So Winter took the brunt of, he was just a distraction from what Hillary Clinton was doing. He was nothing but a distraction. They had his case in the news for weeks, just to distract you from what Hillary Clinton was doing.
Suddenly, there were all these new emails that had to be investigated. Comey, for reasons that you will see in the book, felt that he had to make an announcement he was reopening that. And one reason he did that was because there was a hard core of anti-Hillary FBI agents in the New York office. The New York office is where the Wiener laptop was. Everyone in New York knew that it had been found. I can tell you with 100% certainty, if Comey had not made that announcement, it would have leaked. And it would have been so much more destructive, both to Hillary Clinton and to the FBI's reputation, if it emerged through the media and leaks that this had been uncovered and the American people hadn't been told, than if Comey stepped up and did it. So I think it's very hard to criticize the decision. But I remember being in a board meeting in the Midwest. I would say probably 60% of the people in the room were what I would call moderate Republicans. Were having a hard time coming to terms with voting for Donald Trump. And it was like a cold wind swept through the room. And I could tell the feelings against Hillary just crystallized like that, and Trump got a lot of votes at that very moment. Nate Silver did a very, very in-depth survey of the very narrow margin of the election to show how just a few key votes in states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, could have shifted it. And he concluded that the Comey announcement really was the determining factor. Well, the fact is, we'll never know. You can't run this like a science experiment. We can't go back and rerun the election without the variable of the thing being reopened. I think to blame it all on Comey is a great oversimplification, because the unfortunate fact for Hillary Clinton is that when it was reopened, she had a decades-long history of being accused of self-serving, at times illegal behavior. There were still questions about Whitewater. There were questions about the billing records that showed up in the White House. There were questions about how she covered up her husband's philandering. There were questions about how she had attacked other women. And so this narrative fell on fertile ground. That was not Comey's fault. Days later, through Herculean efforts, he was able to exonerate Mrs. Clinton once again. The media showed very little interest. I demonstrate here that after the emails were first found, it was reopened. That was the lead story in major network news and papers for 6 out of the next 7 days. When he announced that it was now closing and that they had not found anything on the emails, it was not the lead story in a single news outlet.
Exactly. So, like they said, they haven't found anything, so-called found anything. Like I said, they're not going to sit here and out someone that's a part of their group, period. The elite will not out you if you are going with what they're trying to do. At all. The elite would not go against you if you're going with the grain, not against the grain. So of course it's not going to be in all the media outlets. No. Why would they do that? It's a lot of things that they're not going to put out in the media outlets. A lot of things go on around behind closed doors and behind the scenes that they're not going to put out in the media outlets. No matter how much the media, no matter how much you think the media is for the people and want to bring you the news and facts, they're not going to bring you the news and facts. They're going to bring you what the elite wants you to know, period. So, why would they do that? Why would they out themselves on the media? Who owns the media? The elite owns the media. So what you see on the media is what they want you to see. That's why you need to deal with only the new media. We are the new media. We're bringing the truth. We're bringing the real news. Old media is not going to bring you the real news. They're going to bring you what the elite wants you to know or wants you to think. Let's get back to the clip.
The lead story that day was that a group of people had rushed Trump at a rally after someone had yelled the word gun in the crowd, and it turned out the guy didn't even have a gun. A story that nobody even remember except for the fact that they went and looked it back up. And yet that overshadowed Clinton's exoneration. I don't think you can blame that on Comey. Was Comey wrong to take matters into his own hands and exonerate Clinton, not leave that decision to the Attorney General? That is why he had to then make the announcement.
Exactly. So why would Comey exonerate Hillary Clinton but not leave it up to the judge? It didn't even make it to the judge. It's a reason why they didn't want to make it to the judge. So Comey took it upon himself to exonerate Hillary Clinton. If it would have made it to the judge, all the information, all the proof would have came out. It would have came out. But instead, they used the middleman Comey to put a stop to it, period. Let's get back to the clip. It's what the deep state is all about, man.
Announcement all over again. when he did reopen it. The reasons for that are fascinating. Again, that you see it in context in the narrative. I think that's probably the most controversial thing he did, and with benefit of hindsight, I would have urged him not to do it, but who has benefit of hindsight? He didn't have it. At the time, he was very concerned that the American people would feel a verdict rendered by the Justice Department was partisan and would not be fair. And there was reason for that. Loretta Lynch had said a few things that made him suspicious. President Obama had dismissed it as not a significant investigation, which he didn't like. But the thing that really put him over the edge was when Bill Clinton barged onto Loretta Lynch's plane on the tarmac in Phoenix, sat down and stayed there for 35 minutes. That became public. There was rampant speculation that he had intervened to affect his wife's investigation with the Attorney General.
And he did. He did. He's a part of the Skull and Bones. He can do what he wants to do. He barged onto there. You heard what he said? He barged onto it and sat down. Believe me. He's a part of the Skull and Bones, so he can do what he want to do. He can influence what he want to influence. He can divert what he wants to divert, when he wants to divert it. I don't know what to say to get you guys to realize that these people influence everything that they want to influence. They want to hide some discrepancies. They will hide it. They want to hide the lies. They will hide it. They're not going to sit here and let you know what the real is. They're going to lie and lie and lie and hide the truth until the truth eventually comes out. But it's only going to come out through new media. It's not going to come out through the old media. It's going to come out through the new media. Because the old media is owned by the elites. Period.
I do have, I believe, the most detailed account of what actually happened on that airplane. And I have to say my heart goes out to Loretta Lynch. She's a very nice person. She's a very polite lady. Bill Clinton is a force of nature, and he barged in there, and just when she thought she was going to get him off, he decides to clear the bags away and sit down and spend another 15 minutes talking. But it was not about his wife. Unfortunately, the appearances were so bad. There was massive coverage of this, and again, it went on for days about how he had
See, what you don't know is Loretta Lynch was going to bring out the truth. So what the elite do? The elite sent the husband there to make sure that it doesn't come out. Ever since then, you ain't really heard nothing about Loretta Lynch, period. You haven't heard anything about Loretta Lynch. You haven't heard anything about her, period. You haven't heard anything about her. Why? Because when things start to come out and the person who brings it out, guess what? They put a stop to them. Remember my last video when, not my last video, but a couple of videos back that I made, and you seen the governor come out with all this conspiracy. He had his own show, Conspiracy Theories. He was bringing out so much truth and so much facts. They put a stop to him. Ever since then, you have not heard from him since. If you have heard from him, it has not been about nothing about conspiracies at all. That will put a stop to you. Same thing happened to Loretta Lynch. That's all I'm saying. Same thing happened to Loretta Lynch. Same thing.
Trying to affect his wife's outcome. And that's what really tipped Comey into feeling he could not inspire confidence in the American people unless he came forward to do it. I think you can quarrel with that decision, but you can't really quarrel with the motive. And I have to wonder, I've been fascinated by the Clintons for so long. I'm sure Bill Clinton was not consciously trying to sabotage his wife's campaign. But if he was trying to sabotage his wife's campaign,
he wasn't.
This is the single best thing he could have done to do it. Okay. One of the central characters in here is Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General.
Listen.
Rod Rosenstein came to Washington as the deputy. He was the longest serving U.S. attorney in the country. He'd been the U.S. attorney for Maryland in Baltimore. And when he was first appointed, somebody asked Comey what he thought of him, and he said, which turned out to be quite prescient, he's a survivor. Rosenstein, though, was also highly respected, considered to be very independent, who would do the right thing. He stepped into a Justice Department and a White House that was, however, so untethered from standard norms of behavior, from the rule of law and ethical behavior, that you see in these pages, he became increasingly unnerved. You may recall that Sessions recused himself from Russia, which meant Rosenstein was now in charge of it. So Trump decides impulsively he is going to fire Comey. He calls people into the White House. He says, I'm going to fire Comey, don't try to talk me out of it. He brings Sessions and Rosenstein and he says, what do you think of me firing Comey? Sessions says, oh, it's fine with me. Rosenstein said, well, I do think they kind of mishandled the Clinton administration. Trump immediately perks up and says, well, can you write me a memo to that effect? So Rosenstein dutifully goes back, he writes a memo critical of Comey and the Clintons, and he hands it back to the White House. All of a sudden, Trump, who remember had already decided on his own to fire Comey for reasons completely unrelated to the Clintons, grabs the memo and he says, yes, this is the reason he must be fired. And the White House press corps went out and said, the Justice Department insisted that Comey be fired because of the way he handled the Clinton investigation. And then Trump called up Rosenstein and said, I want you to go out and do a press conference and say, you are the one who insisted that Comey be fired because of the handling of the Clinton thing. Well, at this point, Rosenstein is in total shock because he knew this is completely false. It is not because of the Clintons that Trump wanted to fire Comey, and it was not his idea to fire Comey, and to his credit, he refused to do that. Trump tried to get Sessions to pressure him. Sessions says, no, that is a false narrative, and we're not going to put it out. Days later, Rosenstein calls Andrew McCabe over. Andrew McCabe has become the acting FBI director since Comey was fired. And I want to read just a brief passage. They were talking about something relatively innocuous, and I report as follows. Rosenstein's gaze shifted toward the closed door to the room, somewhere off in the distance. His eyes looked glassy, his voice wavering, his eyes teared up. He said he couldn't believe what was happening. The White House was trying to make it look as if it was his idea to fire Comey. That wasn't true. The president had asked him to write the memo only after announcing that he was firing Comey. Rosenstein was obviously struggling to keep his emotions in check. McCabe was shocked Rosenstein was confiding in him, essentially calling the president a liar. They barely knew each other, but he wanted to be compassionate. Are you okay, McCabe asked. No. Are you getting any sleep? No. Is your family okay? Rosenstein said there were news trucks parked outside his house. His wife and family were upset. There was a pause. Then Rosenstein said, "There's no one here I can talk to you about this. There's no one I can trust." Rosenstein had seemed again to be struggling to hold his emotions in check. After a pause, he asked if McCabe thought he should appoint a special counsel, and McCabe said yes, it would be a good idea. Rosenstein said he'd always considered Jim Comey a friend and a mentor, someone he looked up to. "The one person I wish I could talk to is Jim Comey." Well, good luck with that, McCabe thought. This is the guy he just fired. We'll see there's a sequence of events where Rosenstein offers to wear a wire, to secretly record the president, to invoke the 25th Amendment, all of which is true. But by the end of the Mueller investigation, he is a new person. He has survived. There were 2 occasions when the Justice Department was drafting press releases saying Trump was going to fire him. He goes to the White House, he meets alone with Trump, he comes out, his job is intact. As soon as the Mueller report is delivered, he and the new Attorney General, Barr, rush to state that Trump has been exonerated, that there is no crime, there's no obstruction of justice case to be made. This is not what the Mueller report said. Mueller wrote a letter to that effect, as you probably know. The Mueller report was far more damning than anything that Barr and Rosenstein was willing to say. And this is a classic example, I believe, of well-intentioned bureaucrats who get into the Trump orbit, who are drawn into this web of falsehoods, of irresponsible, if not illegal behavior, and then are asked to protect the president. And the president, again, leverage being a theme here. Because Rosenstein lied about the wire and the 25th Amendment, Trump had leverage over him and could fire him whenever he wanted.
All right. Now, I don't want this to be too long. I want you to marinate over what you heard and what you just saw. So this will be part 1. Part 2, I'll be doing this pretty soon. So make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you leave a like. Make sure you comment. Once you leave a like and comment and subscribe to the channel, guess what? That makes YouTube algorithm see that, you know, this is the video to be produced to all of the YouTube community, which in turn will bring in more and more and more people who will see the truth, receive the truth, and subscribe to the channel. Help the channel grow, man. I'm gonna bring out the truth all the time. Every time I hit you with a video, it's gonna be a good one. It's gonna be a real video that bring out real truth. No fabrication needed. No fabrication necessary. With that being said, this is Unapologetic Truth, the channel where we speak the truth and don't apologize for it. Why? Because the truth never apologizes. I'm out.